The HOA president stood on my grandmother's porch waving eviction papers and smirking like she'd just won the lottery. What she didn't know, I owned the lake she was staring at and the only parking lot her precious neighborhood could use. I'm Ezra, and 3 months ago I thought I was about to lose everything my family built. This woman, Brenna Caldwell, had decided my rustic cabin was an eyesore that didn't belong in her perfect little community. She gave me 72 hours to pack up and leave the home my grandmother left me or face legal action. But here's the thing about bullies, they never do their homework. And Brenna picked the wrong fight with the wrong family. What would you do if some power-hungry neighbor tried to steal your family's legacy? 2 years ago, I inherited my grandmother Opal's lakefront cabin after she passed at 91. This wasn't some fancy vacation home, it was a sturdy sanctuary built in 1963 from local cedar, where 3 generations of my family had found peace. Opal always chuckled and called it her worthless swamp land, winking like she was sharing the world's best inside joke. I used to think it was just her humble way. Turns out grandmother was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. After my divorce imploded my corporate life, I traded my downtown consulting office for remote tech work and actual sanity. The cabin sits on what the tax records claimed was 2.3 acres of pine forest and marsh. Every dawn brought the haunting call of loons echoing across mirror-still water. Evenings found me on the weathered dock, bare feet dangling in water so clear you could count stones 20 feet down. But paradise always attracts parasites. 3 years ago, developer Randy Morrison finished Lakeshore Estates, 47 identical McMansions that sprouted around our lake like some suburban infection. Most new neighbors were decent people, but every neighborhood gets its dictator. Brenna Caldwell arrived from some cookie-cutter suburb in her spotless BMW, looking like she'd stepped off a country club magazine cover. Within 6 months, she'd anointed herself queen of the Waterfront Improvement Committee. Her reign of terror started with sweet elderly folks getting slammed with fines for refusing to paint their garden sheds bureaucratic beige. The sound of her designer heels clicking across pavement became our neighborhood's air raid siren. We'd hear that sharp click 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 and know someone was about to get lectured about property values. 18 months ago the HOA officially formed. That's when Brenna revealed her true ambition: total control. She convinced 5 spineless board members to retroactively claim authority over all waterfront properties, including my grandmother's cabin that predated their plastic kingdom by 40 years. The harassment escalated like a bad fever. Monthly bills for $300 in mandatory community fees. Certified letters demanding $1,200 in architectural review penalties because my cabin's honest cedar siding wasn't approved suburban beige vinyl. I tossed them in my fireplace, figuring any competent lawyer would laugh these demands into next week. My grandmother's place had been grandfathered in since the Johnson administration. Or so I thought. Then came that crisp Tuesday morning when Brenna strutted up my front steps, designer heels drumming against grandmother's time-worn pine boards like a war march. She clutched those eviction papers like Moses carrying tablets. "This structure violates multiple community standards," she announced, her expensive perfume failing to mask the stench of pure entitlement. Standing there watching this tennis outfit tyrant lecture me about standards on land my family had claimed before she was born, I remembered grandmother's mysterious smile whenever she'd mentioned her worthless swamp land. Time to discover what she'd really left me. Within 12 hours of delivering her eviction ultimatum, Brenna had gone nuclear. She'd filed complaints with county code enforcement, launched a social media campaign painting me as an unstable drifter, and was spreading poison throughout the neighborhood. That's when something my Uncle Morris had mentioned clicked into focus. He was a retired real estate lawyer who always said smart property owners verify their rights before surrendering to bullies. Monday morning found me in the county courthouse basement, surrounded by decades-old files. Dorothy, the filing clerk who'd been sorting deeds since the Carter administration, became my guide through layers of property history. "Honey, most folks never look past their tax records," she said, pulling thick folders. "But old waterfront properties, they're like vintage wine. Sometimes they get better with age." What I discovered made my heart race. My property carried established riparian rights dating back to the original 1891 homestead patent. Every structure on my land predated current zoning by decades, protecting them under grandfather clauses. But here's where Dorothy dropped the real bombshell. "Your property line extends much further east than what's showing on modern tax maps," she said, pointing to a 1962 boundary survey. "See this notation? It references an additional 200 feet of land area. My blood turned to ice water. What's 200 feet east of my cabin? Dorothy smiled like she was delivering the world's best Christmas present. According to this, it would include that gravel parking area your neighbors use. The one everyone thinks belongs to the community. The revelation hit like lightning. Brenna had been threatening to evict me while her entire neighborhood trespassed on my land daily. Uncle Morris spread my documents across his desk like a general planning battle. Your grandmother was smarter than I thought, he said. This Brenna character just picked a fight with the wrong family. We needed an updated survey to confirm the boundaries. Dylan Pike, the surveyor's son who'd inherited the family business, arrived with GPS equipment that looked like it belonged at NASA. 3 hours later, Dylan's space-age equipment confirmed what grandmother's faded ink had claimed. This is bulletproof, he announced. Your property line cuts right through that parking lot. I'd estimate about 15 prime spots sit entirely on your land, plus the main entrance access road. Brenna had spent weeks collecting signatures demanding my eviction while her entire army of supporters committed daily trespassing on my property. But Dylan wasn't finished dropping bombshells. There's something else, he said, cross-referencing measurements. This survey includes riparian boundaries that extend into the lake itself. See those dock slips everyone's been renting from the HOA? They're sitting in water that legally belongs to you. Not only did I own the parking lot, I owned the lake bottom where every boat in the neighborhood was anchored. The HOA had been collecting slip fees for 3 years on water that belonged to me. While Brenna played neighborhood prosecutor, I was researching who actually owned the lake that gave Lakeshore Estates its multi-million-dollar appeal. The State Water Management Department files revealed something that made my entire body tremble. Our lake, all 47 crystal-clear acres that every single resident used for swimming, boating, and fishing, had never been transferred from private ownership to state control. When my great-grandfather's homestead was divided in 1962, the water rights stayed attached to the main parcel. My parcel. I didn't just own waterfront property. I owned the entire lake. Every boat slip fee the HOA had collected, $200 monthly per slip times 23 boats times 36 months. That was $165,600 in stolen rental income from water that belonged to me. The HOA had been advertising boat slips to prospective residents as a premier community amenity. They'd been using my lake as their primary selling point while simultaneously trying to evict me. Uncle Morris nearly fell out of his chair when I showed him. We're looking at over $200,000 in unauthorized commercial exploitation of your property, he calculated. That's not just trespassing. That's conversion, unjust enrichment, commercial theft, and potentially criminal fraud. But there was more. Every property in the development had received substantial tax reductions for being classified as lakefront community residences with shared water access privileges. The county had been giving residents collective tax breaks worth hundreds of thousands based on their assumed legal right to use my water. Your neighbors have saved roughly $300,000 collectively in property taxes over 3 years, Morris explained. But that access was never legally granted. Friday evening arrived heavy with warfare. The community center crackled with tension as 42 residents squeezed into folding chairs. Brenna commanded the front of the room like a general addressing troops, armed with her petition and delusions of authority. Tonight we take our community back, she declared. I sat in the back row, grandmother's survey burning like dynamite in my lap, watching this woman orchestrate my destruction while literally standing on my stolen land. Brenna's presentation unfolded like character assassination. Photos of my cabin from unflattering angles, financial projections about how my noncompliance threatened property values, testimony about my hostile attitude. Therefore, Brenna announced with dramatic flourish, I move that this board authorize immediate legal action, including daily fines of $500 until full compliance. That's when I stood up. Thank you, Mrs. Caldwell, for that thorough presentation, I said calmly. I have some information that might interest everyone before we vote. Uncle Morris stepped forward with our briefcase while Dylan wheeled in GPS equipment. The room's energy shifted from certainty to curiosity. Before we discuss my alleged violations, I think everyone should know exactly whose property we're talking about. Dylan's equipment projected precise GPS coordinates onto the wall, showing my property boundaries extending far beyond what anyone had assumed. According to official county surveys verified this week, My family's land includes approximately 60% of the parking area that this entire community uses daily. Gasps echoed around the room as residents processed what they were seeing. The parking lot they'd been treating as community property was mostly my private land. "That's impossible," Brenna shouted. "Actually," Uncle Morris said, stepping forward, "maintaining someone else's property without permission doesn't establish ownership. It establishes trespassing." "But I wasn't finished," I continued, watching Brenna's face cycle through confusion and horror. "There's something else you should know. The lake that gives this community its name, its property values, its entire identity, according to state water management records, that's privately owned too." The room fell completely silent. "Every boat in that water, every swimming party, every fishing trip, you've been using my family's private lake for 3 years, while your HOA collected fees for access to water that belongs to me." Sheriff Martinez straightened up, suddenly very interested. Brenna's lawyer looked like he was calculating his exit strategy. "Every boat slip fee you've paid," I announced, looking directly at Brenna, "every lake access charge, you've been paying the wrong people." The mic drop moment arrived. "Mrs. Caldwell, you've been trying to evict me from property I own while running an illegal commercial operation on a lake that belongs to me." The room exploded in chaos. Sheriff Martinez stepped forward, restoring order. "Folks, let's focus on solutions instead of blame. That's when I offered the olive branch that would transform our community." "I know this is shocking news," I said. "But I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in creating something better for everyone." Uncle Morris distributed our proposed community agreement. Parking fees of $25 monthly per household. Lake access dropping to $100 yearly per family. Boat slips cut to $75 monthly. "These rates are significantly below market value," Morris explained. Additionally, Mr. Thompson proposes establishing a community improvement fund using surplus revenues to benefit everyone. The vote was 46 in favor, with only Brenna abstaining. Within 3 weeks, our new Lakeshore Community Association had replaced the corrupt HOA with actual democracy. Brenna quietly moved away after the state attorney general began investigating her financial management. The transformation was remarkable. I used community fund revenues to install proper lighting and drainage for the parking area. We established a public beach where families could enjoy the lake legally. Annual cleanup and fish stocking programs turned our water into a model of environmental stewardship. The real victory was personal healing. Neighbors who'd been afraid to speak up began volunteering for improvement projects. My cabin renovation honored grandmother's legacy while contributing to neighborhood beauty. The most meaningful outcome was establishing Opal's Environmental Scholarship Fund using surplus fees, providing college assistance for students studying conservation. As I sit on my dock watching sunset paint the lake in gold and crimson, surrounded by sounds of children playing at our community beach, I understand what grandmother really left me. Not just property but the opportunity to build something better. Now it's your turn. Drop your HOA nightmare experiences in the comments. And if you love seeing everyday heroes outsmart corrupt systems, smash that subscribe button.